El siguiente testimonio les podrá ayudar a entender el por qué artistas como Justin Bieber viven de la manera en la que lo hacen.
Guys, welcome. Before we begin tonight, I would like to thank Adam, who follows us at Victorious Libertas. He read an article on our website and left a comment saying we should interview his friend. And I got in touch with Adam, and he got us in contact with our guest tonight. So thank you, Adam. All right, this man we are interviewing tonight, he was an up-and-coming Hollywood star in the 90s. He has over 50 credits to his name, including the TV series La Femme Nikita, Due South, and Law and Order, and movies such as The Bodyguard, The Stepfather, Dr. Jekyll and Ms. Hyde, and so many others. He played alongside Brad Pitt and Robert Redford in A River Runs Through It, and he starred with Leah Thompson in Casual Sex. And he has given us exclusive rights to play a clip of his newest project called The Spark, in which he wrote and directed. Here is the never-before-seen clip of The Spark.
We watch from the sidelines, the parades of synthetics. God made man in his own image. The cloning and reprogramming DNA is the step backward. The demon race of androids and soulless creatures. Welcome to the future of lunatics, heretics, and sick pedophiles.
He is now speaking out about the horrors of human trafficking, ritual abuse, and pedophilia through his own personal story. Please welcome to our show, Stephen Schellen.
Hi,
Stephen.
Woo-hoo.
So nice to have you on. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, you guys. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Adam, if you're out there.
Yes, thank you, Adam. Okay, Stephen, if we can just give a little background about how you got started acting and a little bit about Hollywood, and then we're going to move forward pretty quickly.
Okay, do you want the canned version or the kind of rapid fire one, I guess, you know? Let's see. Well, I was born in Victoria, BC, Canada. And then I briefly went to school in Ontario where I met Kim, and then I went back to Victoria. I worked as a lumberjack.
Wow.
When I first got out of school, and then I met some kind of this crazy woman, and through her I got involved in modeling, which at the time was fun and everything. But now, I mean, there was a period of my life where I was very embarrassed, you know. And so I met Eileen Ford in Vancouver, who owned Ford Models, and then she had invited me to New York, but I went to London, England instead. And then even though I'm kind of short for a model, you know, I was really determined, and I fought through it. And I had as a young guy, you get to see Europe, you get to experience that culture. Like, it was mind-blowing, really, for a 20-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
And then I moved to New York, and I was with Fords in New York. But by that time, I think I'd sort of, the whole experience had kind of, I like doing, Lomo Vogue and really great, interesting shoots, right? And New York was like Sears Roebuck, this kind of stuff.
Right.
I just kind of lost interest, and they took it so serious. So I was going to see a girlfriend in Australia, and I passed through Los Angeles. This is actually a very typical, I guess, story. So I'm going to Australia, and on the way through, I stop in Los Angeles, and I had someone I knew there that knew someone. And I met this person, and they said, oh, and by the way, Los Angeles to me was like one big shopping mall. It was kind of cheesy compared to, cities like New York and Paris and London and stuff, right? And I found the people kind of cheesy for the most part. Like, everybody really wants to be a movie star,
Right.
or a TV star, And so what I did was I met this business manager who represented Burt Reynolds, Anthony Hopkins, people like that, right? And so this guy gave me his stamp of approval. This kid's going to make us a lot of money, kind of thing. I hadn't even gone to, I've gone to one or two acting classes in New York, but do you know what I mean? They just kind of plucked me out of nowhere, right?
Wow.
So I had William Morris almost right off the bat as an agent. And then William Morris fired me because I couldn't wear that Lacoste shirt, that pink Lacoste shirt, and audition for the A-Team and get it. I wasn't,
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it. So after getting fired from William Morris, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because then I got involved really heavily in classes, and I studied with this beautiful, wonderful woman called Peggy Fury. And Peggy Fury had coached, she had like 3 classes, different levels, right? And she had coached Sean Penn, Angelica Houston, Nick Cage, pretty much everyone that was up and coming at that time that was American, especially from the West Coast. And I was so insane that I'd do things like, for a play I was doing in class, like just a scene, I'd be playing a character from like a Tennessee Williams play. And what I do is I drive to Oklahoma like a maniac, 22 hours straight, tons of coffee, you know what I mean? And then try to, really get myself in this experience in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
And then turn around and come back and go to the class almost straight from the road trip and do the scene. Like, I was maniacal nuts about, I guess, like I said, I think getting fired from William Morris was a really great thing for me. So then I progressively started getting work, and Canada really hadn't become yet what it is now, which is a lot of films, American films, get made in Canada.
Right.
And I've opened my great big mouth about that, because what most people don't realize is one of the main reasons, or why it's so attractive to American film companies, is because it's not the tax breaks in Canada per se. It's that the actors in Canada, like, you come up and do a movie in Canada and you bring along 3 or 4 Hollywood stars kind of thing, right? All the rest of the cast outside of those 3 or 4 actors are local hires in Canada. But you don't have to pay Screen Actors Guild residuals to those actors. And I'll give you an example. I did one day on a what I consider kind of a bad movie, although it was popular. And this is when I was already targeted and homeless and living outside and stuff. But I did one day on Gone in 60 Seconds, and I have probably made about $150,000 in residuals from one day's work.
Wow. That's
Residuals
awesome.
are huge. So they save a bundle. Anyway, so back to the thing. So I'm in LA. I'm at Peggy Fury's. I start getting some work. I'm kind of a wild guy, and then I start a bar. I open a bar in Venice Beach, and I've got 2 partners in that bar, and I talk them into doing a theater company in the bar. But it only could be original theater. Like, as much as I like Sam Shepard and different playwrights, I thought, let's do a theater company where sink or swim. Like, it might be terrible, but at least it's original. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I did in that bar, and that got going and became really popular. I had a bad experience with those guys, and I basically said, just give me my initial investment back. And then I bought a house in the Hollywood Hills, and then I keep working as an actor. And
Wow.
that's just, I mean, you know what? It's important that the audience understand, like, I was never like a huge star, but I think from the training at Peggy Fury and different things I did, I was considered a good working actor, basically.
Yeah,
It's really,
for sure.
the funny thing, I didn't really aspire to much more than that,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always thought, like, the Tom Cruise career, maybe, like, in retrospect, well, they do get to work with really good directors, and they get to work on really, good films, or, that's even not necessarily true. About that, the way that whole system is set up, But yeah, I didn't want to be that kind of, I just wanted to be a working actor. But I guess I prided myself on being, good at what I did.
Yeah.
And that was fine, Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for a couple of decades, I mean, in my opinion, it seemed like you were very successful, and you owned this bar, and you had some big screen movies under your belt, and some TV movies and series. So at one point, things started to kind of go wrong. What instance did you notice that things were going downhill?
Well, I had met a playwright, and I'd written a play with her called Thirst. Her name was Valina Houston. She's black Japanese. She's a USC professor. I didn't want to be with her, and I was briefly in a relationship with her. I barely knew her, but we kept writing, and we wrote a screenplay together. And her agent at the time, she had a writing agent, a literary agent at William Morris. Anyway, she became pregnant, and that's very convoluted how that whole thing happened. I mean, it's so bizarre, right? So I had to pay. I'm paying child support, but I'm getting sued constantly. And lies are made up about me. And it was my first introduction to like smear and lies, and it really got under my skin. Anyway, I needed to pay off the lawyers and this and that, because you're usually obligated to pay your attorney fees and her attorney fees, right? Mm-hmm. So I got a project in Canada I didn't really want to do, and they kept bugging me and asking me, and then finally I succumbed, and I went and did this TV show which filmed in Toronto and Paris. And with Christopher Plummer, son of McCorkindale, whose wife was the ex-girlfriend of Prince Charles. Wow. And then this girl, Serial Claire, who was the mistress, I think, of Mitterrand or Chirac or one of the French presidents. And boy, I couldn't stand those two. That happened. I got to go back to Hollywood just for a second, though, because this is kind of an important bit. A lot of things happen, and it's not until you sort of, in retrospect, you realize, wow, that is weird. Yeah. In Hollywood, if you're doing a film that says FBI or uses the initials CIA, you'll get a knock on your trailer door, like I did, okay? And it's like, and I'm like, come on in, and it's the second or third AD, and they're like, oh, hey, Stephen, we've got these rewrites for you. And I'm like, rewrites? I've already been through hair and makeup. I know my lines. Like, what do you mean rewrites? Well, we talked to the FBI, or we talked to Langley, Virginia, and they've suggested that we make these changes. So that I know firsthand. There's some things we all know firsthand. Yeah. For an absolute fact, I know, even if the CIA's if they're portrayed as bumbling idiots, the CIA wants the American public to think they're bumbling idiots. Like, they did a movie with Brad Pitt and Robert Redford. And it was Redford that directed Brad Pitt and me, and A River Runs Through It. So I was curious to see this movie Spy Game, because by that point I'd already been targeted for 6-7 years. I go to see the film, and they're walking around headquarters in Langley, and Redford's allowed to make these phone calls on his cell phone to some hidden Swiss bank account or whatever it was. And it's like, the reality of that ever happening, so that the CIA had authorization or had screen approval on everything they said and did. So they basically want you, Joe Average or American public, to think that you can just walk around Langley, Virginia with your cell phone and phone your hidden bank account in Switzerland.
So Steve, you used a word, okay? You brought it out, because you and I had talked extensively yesterday. Targeted. I don't want to get into too much of targeted today, but I just want you to explain what is targeting, and then probably the second video we'll talk about targeting more and how they targeted you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to make it as quick as I can. It's such a deep, horrible,
I know,
black hole. I was married to a French woman I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about her past or anything. She may have been put on me by the producer of that crummy TV show I did in Canada. Could have been some of McCorkindale. Could have been Serial Claire. I don't know. She worked in a hotel in Paris where she was allowed to sleep with, men. And it would be mostly like Arab men, because most of the Arabic diplomats and embassies were around that area. So she was allowed to function like that. And Kim and I often wonder, like, why would a girl working the reception be allowed to do that and not lose her job? And the hotel staff knew that she lied about everything, but none of this I knew at the time. I had a brief fling with her. She became pregnant. I didn't want to make the same mistake as with my first child. So I'm like, okay, I'll marry her. I was married for 4 or 5 years to her. And then I found out that she was getting beat up by other men. Other men were with my children alone in the house while she was in a cabin with other men. And then I found out she admitted to being a prostitute, which is so weird. Money, yeah. And
so
I think
so this is while you were still acting, and
yeah,
you were not in town. You were.
Sure, I was in the process of signing papers, okay. And I never wrote this in the stuff I sent you. I forgot, because you forget a lot. I was starting Lionsgate. That's what my partner wanted to call the production company, the lawyer John Hardy out of Vancouver. So everything was going pretty good at that point, right? And I got kind of blindsided. I'm married to a prostitute, and my children are there when she's with men, and she's working out of a trailer at a gas station, but she's also, I think, working out of a hotel, a fancy exclusive hotel downtown Toronto, where all the, the senators from Ottawa, our politicians, they would stay at this apartment complex across the street, and then they got busted for having their hands in the cookie jar, go across the street, and, get their yayas, you know what I'm Anyway, so that's what happened. I go to the police, I go to Children's Aid, I do all this sort of, because, these are my kids. Like, it was fine to be a wild guy before I had kids, but when you start having children and, you don't want to ever jeopardize that, or I certainly didn't. So instead of me going nuts, what I did is I went through all the channels at the time that I thought I had to do, right? Police, Children's Aid, lawyers, all those things. Well, what I found out was there were cars waiting around the farm. As soon as I approached the car, it'd race off. That was nothing. Then it just got weirder, and it got weirder and weirder and weirder. Eventually, my kids were taken to Europe against my will because I'd filed papers to prevent that, and I was followed basically 24/7. I think I had 3 attempts on my life, but most of it's done to spook you. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about what's going on, that you're being followed, someone's breaking in here and moving my furniture around. I mean, what do you think most people respond? Respond to you when you say that. They're like, hey, maybe some lithium, or, yeah. I've got a really good shrink you could talk to. And this is 21 years ago. A lot has come out since then.
Yes.
And you're seeing it with people in Pizzagate. They're now experiencing a form of targeting, right?
Yes.
Well, 21 years ago, for me, I didn't know anyone else that was going through this. Break-ins, harassment, death threats the middle of the night, knocking on a hotel or motel door, no one there, paperwork constantly stolen. So it became a joke. I had to constantly make paperwork. And, initially you're frightened for your life.
Este video es la primera parte de este testimonio. No se pierdan la siguiente parte. Síganos en nuestras demás redes sociales por si vuelve a haber algún intento de censura y nos borran alguno de los canales. Pueden encontrar todo el contenido que ha sido censurado en redes sociales más populares dentro de Rumble y BitChute. Acá abajo están los links para que puedan ver más contenido como este. Les agradezco su apoyo y recuerden tener los ojos bien abiertos.